Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be talking about how you can learn up to 100 words every single day. We're going to go through all of those steps, and we're also going to be talking about passive and active vocabulary. I think that this is ultimately an essential step to becoming fluent in the language, as I've said before, so let's get on with the video. So when it comes to my own process, and so that you guys can take this as an example, I am learning 7 languages and I'm learning 14 words per language every single day. That comes down to about 98 words every day. And the reason why I'm saying this is because you don't have to necessarily learn 100 words in one language and for every single language. I think that that would be pretty difficult if you were learning 700 words every day. Not to say that that is impossible. Obviously that wouldn't be doable for me with my schedule and just in terms of like what I'm doing. But if that's doable for you, that's fine. I'm just saying that you don't have to learn 100 words for all the languages that you're learning. Again, just make it so that your language routine is sustainable. But in any case, I am telling you that it is very possible and very doable, I think, to learn about 100 words, even if it's not on the same language. Another thing that I wanted to say is that I am still learning words in Spanish and English, and the reason for that is because there are so many words in both of these languages that I don't think I will ever learn, just because they're so incredibly numerous. And the reason I do this is because I don't want to lose my Spanish. I haven't been in Colombia in about 8 years, and I don't want my level of Spanish to downgrade just because I'm not utilizing the language and I'm not learning anything new. I think that you can always learn something new, even if it's your native language. I wanted to make a comment on that. And just to tell you guys why I chose 100 words as my daily target, it's because of a little anecdote. You can skip it if you're not interested, but basically when I came to the United States, I had to apply to high school and I had to take this exam that entailed like a vocabulary section. I was competing with many people. It was kind of like the SAT, if you're familiar with that. It was called the SSAT, and I basically had to learn a bunch of words. I didn't feel prepared the first time I took it, and I didn't get a good score. So I got to talk to 2 different tutors, and one of them said, you know, you can learn like 10 words a day, that is fine. And my second tutor just said, you know, like if you don't learn 100 words per day, you're basically going to fail. So I know that's a little harsh, but I actually did take that advice, and I started, you know, learning all the flashcards and doing a bunch of reading, and I would carry the dictionary with me, which I know that's a little bit too much. You don't have to do that, but just to tell you that with perseverance you are going to be able to learn so many words and so well, because at the end of the day I got a 93 percentile in the test, which means that I scored higher than 93% of the people who took the test. Then again, I think that it is important for you to be dedicated and motivated and perseverant if you're going to learn vocabulary, and I promise you that if my 8th grade self was able to do that, you're going to be able to do that as well. So guys, now let's get talking on about strategies. I think it's a little bit difficult to first create a method for yourself, just because a lot of people think about the most traditional thing of doing flashcards and drawing them from like readings or just vocabulary lists from the internet. I don't think that that is very useful unless you're in the very first steps of learning a language. Then I think that learning the 100 most basic things in that language is very useful. However, if you're a little bit of a more advanced in a more advanced level, I think that you should draw vocabulary from sources that will really entertain you, as I do. I draw my vocabulary from songs that I'm listening to, Netflix, YouTube, as I've talked in previous videos, but I don't think that I can emphasize this enough. It is very important for you to draw this from sources that will not make your study tedious. Otherwise, you're just going to quit, and that is not the goal. The goal here is for you to remain consistent all throughout your language journey. Now, I think it is always useful to look back at how we learned our native language. And by that I mean, like, think about your days in school and how you had like different subjects like math, science, literature, languages, you were probably not interested, or at least not at the same level in each of those subjects. I know that I wasn't very interested in math, and I was less interested in science than in literature. But anyway, I think that all of those things really helped me to build a very strong vocabulary, just because I was basically forced to be talking about all these things. And this is the way that native speakers learn their language. They are very comfortable in speaking in different subjects, whether they like them or not, just because they have found themselves in different experiences that, you know, where they have learned the vocabulary particular to that domain or that field. So in terms of you as a learner, you should also know things about math. You should know like how to say divide, subtract, add, if you want to be very, very fluent in that language. So in order to do that, I suggest that you watch a lot of documentaries, like science documentaries. I like personally biology documentaries, like animals, and evolutionary documentaries where they talk about dinosaurs. I love that. Also, you should learn, you know, like how to say the most basic scientific and mathematical things, you know, like the planets. You should know the names of the planets, stuff like that. I know that this sounds a little bit more niche, but if you want to like get to a native level, you are going to have to tackle all of those nooks and crannies so that you are able to reach a very good and comfortable level in your language. Also, if you're worried that you're not going to, or that you don't know where to find documentaries, you can find documentaries easily in YouTube if you look up like the prison system or something that you're interested about, like the most trafficked animal in the world. So just do that. You will find a ton of information. I think that they do not censor other languages. Like for some reason, I have found so many documentaries in Spanish and French. For some, I don't know why, like from Nat Geo and Discovery Channel. So I think that you will be able to easily find that. If you don't, there are also plenty of documentaries on Netflix, and I think that if you can't find that, just type it on Google and you will probably find something like a video on some other platform. So guys, in terms of raw strategy, in terms of learning vocabulary, I will disappoint you a little bit in the sense that it sounds daunting to learn 100 words every single day, because it is. The only thing that you can really do is expose yourself as much as you can, and this is from somebody that has been learning languages for a very long time, and I have tried many tricks and tips from other people to learn vocabulary quicker, and it doesn't really work. Like learning vocabulary during your sleep, that doesn't really is not very effective. It doesn't really do anything for you. You really have to exercise your mind as though it were a muscle so that you can have the best results possible. One thing that I will tell you, and which will be a little bit uplifting, is that the more you expose yourself to the language, the more sense it will make to you, and the easier it will be for you to memorize those words. And the reason I'm saying this is because when I was learning Romance languages, for example, they have an incredible lexical similarity, which means that many words in one language, like for example Portuguese, are very similar to words in Spanish. So for a Spanish speaker, the reason it's easier to learn Portuguese than for an American speaker is because they're sort of familiar with what the words mean, and from the get-go they kind of understand the meaning. So it was easier for me to learn words in Portuguese because the only thing that I needed to do was to change a few letters, and then I would basically learn the word, right? Now, the other strategies that I utilize aside from exposing myself is to, I know this is going to sound a little weird, but is to talk to myself. And the reason I do that is just to solidify the vocabulary word that I have in my mind. And I'm going to come back to that after I explain passive and active vocabulary. So basically the difference between passive and active vocabulary is that passive vocabulary is a word that you understand what it means, you recognize it if you see it in text, but you can't really produce it. So if you were writing an exam or an essay, you wouldn't really understand how to use that word. So for example, if you were learning the word talk, you wouldn't really be able to use that in a conversation. You understand what it means, you have it in your mind, but you are not able, or you never use it when you're talking to somebody else. And the way that I pass passive vocabulary into my active vocabulary, or the way that I convert passive vocabulary into active vocabulary, is by talking to myself. And I will give you a little bit of an example here. I have my trusted language notebook with me. And so these are basically like the words that I have for the week, and I will just use one like galvanizer. I didn't know this before I started this list, so then after I studied the meaning and I looked it up in the dictionary, it passed on to my passive vocabulary. And the way that I make it be in my active vocabulary is that I take this 14 words that I have here, right? And I just basically have a small conversation with myself. I am just going to give you an example with galvanize. So galvanize is to basically stimulate somebody into action and to shock them. So to shock somebody into action is very violent. But it basically spurs action, right? And the way that I would use it was like, oh my god, like I galvanized those people to protest in front of the White House because I didn't think that the White House was doing a good job in terms of helping people with social security, something like that. So I will have like small conversations with myself, and I would try to utilize the word at least in 3 different sentences. I think that really helps me because I listen the word from my own mouth, and I also hear it and I learn how to use it in a sentence. So I think that is very, very, very useful and something that, although it's weird, I recommend. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. It got a little bit long, so if you guys want me to go a little bit more into detail into any of the things that I talked about in this video, please just let me know down below. My voice is kind of fainting, but thank you so much again, and I will see you next week.